What are we discussing on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast? Zach Gallen once again labored through another start. Do the D-backs have any starters in their rotation that they can trust right now?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. On today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, we are talking to you guys about Zach Gallen's struggles in game 2 against the Braves. Can the D-backs bounce back in game number 3? And where are last year's All-Stars? Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners. Sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the podcast and discuss game number 2, Zach Gallen versus Chris Sale. I was super excited for this pitching duel. I was talking to you guys yesterday about how great Chris Sale has been this season, right? Bounce back year for Chris Sale after barely pitching the last 4 years in Major League Baseball with injuries and the COVID season. And I never thought we would see elite Chris Sale once again, but the D-backs got a great taste of elite Chris Sale last night because they were able to get a few hits off of him, but they were not able to convert runners in scoring position. They struck out 9 times, and Chris Sale just straight up dominated the D-backs lineup. I mean, if you're a lefty, you had no chance against Chris Sale. And for the D-backs, their starting pitcher, Zach Gallen, who we, believe is an ace, believe is a tier 1 starter, going against one of the best pitchers in the National League right now, arguably the Cy Young favorite in Chris Sale. Zach Gallen did not step up to the plate. We need elite Zach Gallen right now, but the way he's pitching before the All-Star break, I don't think Zach Gallen is going to get that tap on the shoulder saying, you know what, we want you as a reserve. We want you as an injury replacement, because Zach Gallen entering the All-Star break is not looking like his best self. In his most recent start, Zach Gallen really labored to finish that game. I thought he looked good in his most recent start against the LA Dodgers for most of the game, but as the game wore on, he labored more. He struggled to put guys away, and it just wasn't the best Zach Gallen. And then all of a sudden, in the 4th inning against the Dodgers, after not allowing an earned run through the first 3 innings, all of a sudden the Dodgers tack on 3 runs in the 4th, and Zach Gallen is done after 4 innings because he threw so many pitches. And last night's game was kind of reminiscent of that most recent start against the Dodgers, because once again, Zach Gallen labored through the game. He only gave up 2 earned runs through the first 5 innings, but then once again gets to the 6th inning and gives up a home run and just kind of unravels toward the end, that second, third time through the lineup. And I just don't know what's going on with Zach Gallen. The version that we're seeing right now of Zach Gallen is not peak Zach Gallen. This is not the best version of Zach Gallen that we've seen. And I don't know when was the last time we've seen a consistent span of games of Zach Gallen being elite, because we know he can do it. We know he had that scoreless streak last year in the first half of the season. He was really elite, but something happened from the second half of last season until now where Zach Gallen's still a great pitcher, but I don't know if I feel like he's Zach Gallen with the capital G anymore. I still think he's elite, but he hasn't been consistently elite. He'll have 2 to 3 elite starts and then have a couple of weird starts. I don't know where the overall elite consistency from Zach Gallen has been over the last few months, over the last half season until now. It's been a little bit more of peaks and valleys with Zach Gallen as a starter. And that's something you might not have expected from him, considering his track record over the last few years. But for some reason, over the last few months, over his last, 18 starts or so, 20 starts or so, going back to last year. It's been a little bit more hit or miss at times for Zach Allen. I felt like from 2020 to 2023 first half, you would say 80% of the time he's giving you, 85% of the time he's giving you an elite start. Right now, it feels more like 75% of the time, 70% of the time, two-thirds of the time, Zach Allen's giving you an elite start. And I don't like to see that for the D-backs to go on a roll in the second half of the season and honestly just finish the first half of the season strong. You need elite Zach Allen, and we did not get that in game number 2. And it was very disappointing to see as he went against Chris Sale, who dominated this D-backs lineup. And it wasn't all on Zach Gallen. I mean, Ketel Marte, who has been one of the best defensive second basemen in baseball this season, and not just best, one of the best defensive second basemen. He's been one of the best defensive players in baseball, not just the National League, in baseball this season. Ketel Marte, he's been absolutely elite with his glove. But in game number 2, line drive at him, looked like it was an easy atom ball right to his glove. Don't know what happened. Ball bounced off the glove, goes into the outfield, and a man scores, and that's another run allowed. And if Zach Gallen's allowing runs, Ketel Marte's not making defensive plays that leads to runs being scored for the opposing team. Like, it's going to be hard for the D-backs to win games if your best pitcher can't pitch, and then one of your best defensive players is struggling. Yeah, you're probably not going to win that game, and that's what happened to the D-backs. They weren't able to score against Chris Sale effectively. They were 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. They struck out 12 times as a team. Like we always say, we don't like to do box score rating, but a lot of times when you want to know if the D-backs won or not, you can just look at like the strikeout to walk ratio. 12 strikeouts to only 3 walks for the D-backs. I mean, they had more strikeouts than hits and walks combined. And whenever that happens to the D-backs, they never put together a good game, and that's what we saw in game number 2. Zach Allen struggled, the offense struggled, and in the end, the D-backs were not able to convert enough opportunities to win the game against the Atlanta Braves. Now, I will say before we move on, Kevin Newman, maybe the defensive web gem of the year. Diving stop, glove flip to second base, and you turn 2, absolutely elite. Now, we'll say this for the D-backs. We've seen them lose the first 2 games of a 4-game series before. They did against the Mets to start the month of June. So the D-backs still have a chance to clean up this series, split this series against the Atlanta Braves. They're not done yet. So let's see them bounce back in game number 3, which we'll preview in segment number 2. But hey, if you want to join America's daily fantasy sports app, the best daily fantasy sports app, then I suggest you hop on Prize Picks, because Prize Picks has over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends. Become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And if you plan on buying any tickets for an upcoming D-backs game, I suggest Game Time, because Game Time is the best place for last minute tickets. They have last minute deals that save you up to 60% off buying tickets for sports, concerts, comedy theater, and more. Flash deals save you even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Zone deals save you even more when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the seats. All-in pricing shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkouts and can even get a panoramic view of your seat before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast and discuss if the D-backs can come back in the series and potentially win game number 3, have a bounce back performance, because the D-backs have not looked their best through the first 2 games, and we need to see a complete team effort from the D-backs. That's what we have not seen yet in the series. That's what worked so well for the D-backs against the Dodgers and the Padres when they came back and won the next 2 games. After blowing game number 1, it was a complete team effort. The starting pitching usually held up, or the bullpen was shut down, or the offense was clutch. Like, we saw complete team efforts in those series against the Dodgers and the Padres. And right now, the D-backs as a team aren't getting it done. D-backs had a great starting pitcher in game number 1 of the series against Atlanta. You had clutch hits late in game number 1. It felt like a complete team effort in game number 1, except for your closer, Paul Sewald, who couldn't get it done after getting a fantastic start from your starting pitcher. And then Thompson, Ginkel, and Martinez all shut it down, deliver you the ball in the 9th inning, and Sewald not able to get it done. He even got clutch hits from Corbin Carroll late in game number 1. Disappointing to see. And then game number 2, the offense couldn't get it done. The pitching couldn't get it done. Like, it was a complete team effort of guys not getting it done in game number 2. So now the question is, how will the D-backs respond in game number 3? Can we get a great offensive performance? Can we get a great starting pitching performance? Like, to be honest, I still don't really know. Have they announced who's pitching for the D-backs in game number 3? I don't think I still know. Okay, we got Slade Ciccone on the mound, because I was looking at this last night. I still didn't see anyone. So we're going to have Slade Ciccone on the mound against Charlie Morton, and that's going to be a real concern. I mean, Slade Ciccone feels like he's hitting a wall right now for the D-backs. I loved Slade Ciccone when he entered the season. I thought he could be a solid fill-in replacement starter, but to be honest, I mean, I think the workload is just too big for Slade Ciccone right now. I perform more as probably a bullpen guy, to be honest, a back-end bullpen guy, because he can still throw hard. But right now as a starter, it feels like Slade Ciccone just really laboring right now. He started the season off fine. 3 of his first 4 starts, 2 earned runs or less, but has really struggled since then. And coming off a start against the Padres where he allowed 5 earned runs in less than 5 innings pitched. So for Slade, definitely concerned for him in this start against the Atlanta Braves. Feels like it could be potentially a terrible start where he has a really bad performance and the Braves kill him. But if Slade is able to step up to the plate and perform well against Atlanta, like, that will go a long way for the D-backs this season. And it's not going to be easy going against his counterpart, the ageless wonder in Charlie Morton, who is very good, who is a very quality pitcher. He's on the mound having another solid season. To be honest, if Charlie Morton was on like a mediocre team right now, I would say that's a pretty good like trade candidate that the D-backs should go after, eat some innings, good back end starter, good guy to, fill in a rotation spot while the other guys are injured, and potentially take a rotation spot from a guy like Jordan Montgomery if he continues to pitch like this. And so Slade Ciccone definitely has his work cut out for him. He's got a tough lineup to go against, and he has to go against a seasoned veteran pitcher, Charlie Morton, who is just not going to make a ton of mistakes against his D-backs team. He's just a quality starting pitcher, and so it's not going to be easy to catch him slipping in this game. But hopefully Slade Ciccone can at least have the offense supporting him. Maybe Slade Ciccone can just pitch decent, maybe 3-4 earned runs over 5.5 innings. If he could do that, hopefully the D-backs offense can do enough to step up to the plate. I mean, the offense over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks has been a lot better. They consistently, I mean, the whole season have scored early, but now they're getting back to scoring late, getting back to scoring in late clutch situations. And that's really important for this D-backs team to continue to do that because that's what they did so well last year. The answer backs, as they were called, coming back repeatedly late in games, and the D-backs are finally starting to do that once again. And it feels like in these type of games where the D-backs potentially lose the first two games of the series, feels like that game number 3 is either the D-backs have a great late win where they have some clutch hits and maybe they pulled out in like the 8th or ninth inning, or it's like a convincing win where the D-backs win like by 5 or 6 runs. Like typically when the D-backs are down like 0-2 in a 4-game set, this is usually a good spot for the D-backs. Anytime they're down 0-2 in a series, it has been a good spot for the D-backs this season. And so this could potentially be another good spot where they feel desperate. The back is against the wall. They feel the pressure and they step up in the moment. And going against Charlie Morin, there is definitely a possibility for the D-backs to punch him in the mouth early. That's a term we use a lot on this podcast because Morin, again, when you look at the numbers like a Chris Sale, if you're going to attack Morin, that first inning is probably going to be your best chance because you look at the splits for Morin. The first inning, he has the worst ERA over 6 in that first, and he's also vulnerable with runners in scoring position. He's not terrible, but he's all right. It's like a 270 average, a near 800 OPS. Like he's fine with the runners in scoring position. So if you can score early, get some runners on, I think you have a chance to really punch Charlie Moore in the mouth if you could do that. But you have to punch him early, just like a Chris Sale, because if you let those guys get into a groove, they can definitely shut you down. Also, what I want to see from the lineup, though, in game number 3, I think we need to see more from the top of the lineup. I feel like since the start of July, the bottom of the lineup slightly has been doing more work. I would say it's been like 52-48. The bottom of the lineup feels like they're doing slightly more work since the Dodgers series. So since the Dodgers, I think the bottom of the lineup has done slightly more work. So want to see a little bit more from the top of the lineup. Christian Walker has great career success against Morin. Want to see that continue. A guy like Randall Grichuk has also been very good in his career against Morin, but that's a righty on righty matchup. So we'll see what numbers Torey Lovello cares about. Does he just care about platoon situations, or is he actually going to say, oh, Grichuk has great career numbers against Charlie Morin. Let's go against the grain today and play Randall Grichuk in game number 3. Want to see what happens with the lineup, how Torey Lovello shakes it out, see how he determines to set up the dudes going against the righty to see if he actually wants to play Randall Grichuk, because this is a super critical stretch of games for the D-backs. So let's pray they can close out the first half of the MLB season on a high note. And now I want to talk to you guys about last year's All-Stars needing to step up for the D-backs if they want to go on a run in the second half of the season. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly want to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even your baseball rival cities. From hotels that look over stadiums to a family-friendly resort, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. I can't lie, I love checking out the NL West opponents' stadiums from Petco Park to Dodger Stadium. I love taking a little Cali trip and checking out my rival cities, and I suggest you do the same. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. All right, now let's wrap up the podcast by discussing how we need last year's All-Stars back. Zach Gallen, Corbin Carroll, Lourdes Gurriel, Geraldo Perdomo all made the All-Star team last year for the D-backs. And as of right now, none of them are deserving to go back. And the D-backs need that quartet to leave up to the ceiling that we saw last year if we want the D-backs to go on a second half run. Now, obviously, the D-backs need more than just that quartet to start playing better, right? You need the Jordan Montgomerys, the Eugenio's, the Morenos. Like there's so many positions, right? The Paul Sewald. There's so many players on this D-backs team that you would like to see more from. But I thought with the All-Star break a week away, I thought this would be a fun conversation to have because last year that quartet were so amazing for the D-backs, and this season they just haven't been as good. And when you have four All-Stars from last year not look like All-Stars the very next year, yeah, it's going to dramatically lower the ceiling of your team. And I do believe if Zach Gallen didn't get hurt this year, he could have been an All-Star. I think he would have been an All-Star if he didn't get hurt. But like I was saying in segment number one, ever since last year, I don't know if Zach Gallen is pitching with a capital G. I don't know if he's capital G Zach Gallen ever since the second half of last season. I still think he's a stud. I still think his stuff is nasty. Don't get me wrong. He's added to his velo. He's still a great pitcher, but it feels like there's more starts over the last second half of 2023 till now, where opposing teams looked like they figured him out just a little bit more than they used to. First half of last year, Gallen was not like that. Second half of 22, Gallen was not like that. There's another level that Gallen can tap into. We've seen him be arguably the best pitcher in the National League. And right now, I don't think you would put him on that pedestal. You would say Zach Wheeler, you would say Chris Sale. Like Zach Gallen is one of the best pitchers in the National League, but is he pitching like one of the best right now? I don't think so. We need another level of Zach Gallen, and we know he can tap into another level. And if he doesn't reach what his ceiling can be, I don't know if the D-backs can go on a second half run. Lourdes Gurriel, he's having a very weird season. Was great the first 2 weeks, was bad the next five, and now he has a very large sample size of playing great baseball for over a month. Ever since June, Gurriel has been one of the best players in the National League. And also, the defensive metrics, also like Lourdes Gurriel. If you go look at outfield defensive metrics, they all rate Gurriel very favorably. So for Gurriel, even though he's playing a lot better recently, what we don't want from him is a yo-yo type of season. We don't want 1 month where you look like a AAA player, and then the next month you look like an MVP candidate. Like we need overall consistency. I thought that's what was good from Lourdes Gurriel last year. Yes, he was better in the first half, but I thought month to month he was more or less giving you the same overall production month to month. And this season, I don't think he has the same level of quality consistency. So I think we just need overall more consistency from Lourdes Gurriel. If he can keep up what he's been doing since June, like yeah, that's last year's All-Star back in the fold, Lourdes Gurriel. If he can continue doing what he's currently doing, Geraldo Perdomo, I know he's just the number 9 guy, so my expectations for him aren't as high as the Gallens, the Carrolls, or even the Gurriels. And he's also missed a lot of time due to injury this season. So I will cut Geraldo Perdomo some slack. I'm not going to get on him as much as the other 3 guys because, listen, I know Gallen has been hurt, but Perdomo missed a lot of the season, and it was like as soon as the season started. So he never really got into a groove. So I'm not too upset with how he's looked this year, but there's definitely a little bit more juice so we could get squeezed from Domo. He's been great in terms of hitting. He's got a solid batting average, but what Domo was really good at last year was quality plate appearances. Plate discipline is what Domo was a killer at last year. And right now, you look at his walk rate, it's half of what it was last year. Last year, his walk rate was like 12 and a half. This year, it's like 5.5. Like, that's what made him so important last year. That's what really turned him to an all-star was his quality play disciplines and his ability to get on base via the walk. I think he's a tone setter at the bottom of the lineup with his ability to command the strike zone. And this season, I don't think we've seen as much patience from Geraldo Perdomo. He's seeing way less pitches than he did last year. And so for Domo going forward, get a little bit more patient. See a few more pitches. I think that's what made him such a good asset last year. Of course, no one's better at sacrificing their plate appearance in terms of sac flies, sacrifice hits than Geraldo Perdomo. Great at the small ball. He's just a guy that fills in those margins for you on the edges of your team. And for Domo, he's great at doing that. He's a great tone setter. Just want to see a little bit more patience out of him because I think that's when he's at his strongest. And then, of course, Corbin Carroll. We just want him to show some signs of life. He'll have like a 5-game stretch where you think he's turning it around, and then he's right back in the gutter. He needs to do a better job of he's actually doing, excuse me, a better job of driving and lifting the ball, but he's still not displaying that raw power from last season. He currently has a worse WRC plus than Eugenio Suarez, which is crazy. According to WRC plus, Corbin Carroll's like a top 5, or I'll say bottom 5 player in the National League right now. And I still don't believe the D-backs can crack their ceiling if they don't get Corbin Carroll back from last year. Corbin Carroll is still their most dynamic player. And right now, he is not playing like it. You don't get to the World Series without Corbin Carroll last year. And I don't think you can get to another World Series if you don't get 2023 Corbin Carroll. Don't forget what he did in the postseason last year. 7 for 17 in the first 2 rounds. And then in game 7 against Philadelphia, 3 hits, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. He was critical in that D-backs postseason run last year. And right now, we are just not getting enough juice from Corbin Carroll. If the D-backs want to reach their expectation level, and they're going to need last year's All-Stars to start playing like All-Stars once again in the second half of the season. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. Hopefully, the D-backs win game number 3. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.